Which of these 5 chairs attracts you the most? Don't analyze, don't judge, don't think about comfort or style. Stop, look, and let your heart choose. This is not a simple test. It is an invitation to meet a part of yourself that you rarely notice. Carl Jung believed that our choices, even the seemingly trivial ones, are a reflection of what is hidden within us, the archetypes that live within us, the desires we cannot name, and the wounds we hide from the world. Sometimes what attracts us most says more about our soul than all the words in the world. Is it possible that a single chair can reveal your psyche? Can it point to your shadows, your need for security, or your hidden longing for love? Choose, but choose intuitively. Because what you are about to hear is not just an analysis of aesthetics. It will be a story about you. At first glance, this chair may seem like the most ordinary one. It doesn't stand out, it doesn't scream with colors, it doesn't try to impress. And yet, it is precisely this chair that attracts many of us. There is something soothing about its simplicity, something familiar, something that gives a sense of order in a world full of chaos. If this is the chair you have chosen, it is possible that you have a deep need for clarity and peace within you. Your psyche longs for a space where there is no excess of stimuli, no excess of drama, no excess of expectations. You just want to be, in silence, in simplicity, in clarity. Carl Jung once said that external order is often a compensation for internal chaos. So it's possible that by choosing this chair, you are subconsciously trying to find balance. You are looking for harmony because perhaps something in your life or past was too chaotic, too painful, too unpredictable. Perhaps you grew up in a space where emotions were suppressed and peace was a luxury. Perhaps you learned to survive by simplifying, by reducing, by escaping into silence. Archetypically, this chair symbolizes the runaway or the observer. The runaway is someone who withdraws from the noise of the world not because they are weak, but because they value their inner space more than publicity. They don't want to play the game of appearances. They prefer to watch from the sidelines, to listen rather than speak, to observe rather than be observed. This archetype carries with it the wisdom of distance, but also the risk of isolation. It may indicate a person who protects their heart so effectively that over time, even they lose touch with it. On the other hand, the observer is someone who sees more because they are not distracted by chaos. They can see nuances in silence, meaning in simplicity, and the world in a single glance. People who identify with this archetype are often deeply reflective, attentive, and sensitive to the subtleties of the mental world. But they also often remain in the shadows, avoiding involvement, because contact with other people's intense emotions can be overwhelming. This chair can also symbolize emotional armor, which does not take the form of hardness, but rather withdrawal, an invisible boundary. As if you were saying, I'm here, but not quite. I'm close, but not too close. This is often a defense mechanism that develops in childhood, when we learn that expressing emotions carries the risk of being hurt. Then simplicity becomes safe, silence becomes protection, and distance becomes a guarantee that no one will touch you too deeply. By choosing this chair, you may be someone who desires emotional security above all else. Perhaps you feel most comfortable in structures you know, in relationships that are predictable, in spaces where nothing surprises you. Your soul may be tired of excess. Your heart may be crying out for a break from the drama of the world. But Jung also reminded us, what you repress does not cease to exist. It ceases to be available to your consciousness. Simplicity and order, while beautiful, can also serve as a veil. Behind this minimalism may lie a fear of confrontation, of the emotional mess that awaits behind the door of your heart, of the chaos of relationships that require openness, compromise, and sometimes losing control. Are you afraid of losing control? Does chaos terrify you? Is silence your refuge or your prison? Your choice says, I need peace. But the question is, do you really have it? Or are you just recreating it externally, hoping that it will eventually become internal? This chair is not just a piece of furniture. It is a symbol of a soul that craves lightness, but also of a soul that has perhaps learned not to trust the intensity of life. A soul that is afraid that if it lets in too much, it will not be able to pull itself together again. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just another way of being, another survival strategy, another archetype speaking through you. Because we are not just what we choose, we are also why we choose it. This chair tells a story. Looking at it, you can almost smell old books, feel the warmth of wood, touch the past. It is elegant but not flashy, stable, built into time, as if it already knew the stories of many generations. This is not the choice of someone looking for novelty. It is the choice of someone who longs for depth, meaning, order. If you have chosen this chair, it is possible that your psyche craves structure, rules, and aesthetics that give you a sense of security and meaning. You are a person who hates chaos, not only on an emotional level, but also on an intellectual level. You need a framework. You value order. You believe that the world, although it can be brutal, can be understood if we only find its internal rules. According to Carl Jung's depth psychology, this choice resonates with the archetype of the guardian or traditionalist. The guardian is a figure who protects not only others, but also ideas, values, and heritage. This is a person who feels responsible, who believes that it is the role of humans to care for order, for family, for passing on principles. It is the energy of care, but also of control, of security, but also of boundaries. The traditionalist, on the other hand, is someone who seeks support in what has been proven, someone who trusts what has stood the test of time, sometimes out of fear of change, sometimes out of a deep respect for the wisdom of their ancestors, sometimes out of an inner need for things to be in their place. By choosing this chair, you may be someone who feels a strong need for a moral compass. You have principles. You may not talk about them out loud, but they are important to you. They keep your life in check, allow you to make decisions, and recognize good from evil. You hate dishonesty, indecision, empty words. You need depth, truth, authenticity. But as Jung warns, every archetype has its shadow. Behind the desire for structure may lie a fear of losing control. Behind attachment to tradition, a fear of the unknown. Perhaps you are afraid of chaos, not only external, but above all, internal. What could happen if you let go of control? If you stopped following the rules? If you just felt? A retro-style chair is not just an aesthetics choice. It is an expression of a longing for stability, perhaps for a time when things seemed simpler, when life had clear roles. Father was father, mother was mother, God was in heaven, and people knew their place. This longing can be deep. It may stem from a childhood where there were clear roles but no warmth. Or, on the contrary, you may be trying to build what was missing back then, a structure in which you can find yourself. Perhaps you are someone who tries to keep up appearances, even when the world is falling apart. Someone who cares about aesthetics not because it's fashionable, but because beauty gives you a sense of meaning. Maybe you're afraid to show your vulnerability, so you show elegance instead. Maybe you long for someone to notice how much effort you put into making everything right. Does that mean you're conservative? Not necessarily. Perhaps you simply feel that in the chaos of modern life, you need to hold on to something stable in order not to sink, to preserve what is human, to not fall apart. Jung wrote that the greatest potential for transformation lies where consciousness meets the unconscious. By choosing this chair, perhaps you are trying to ground yourself in a world that is constantly changing. Perhaps you are looking for structure not as a limitation, but as a source of freedom. The freedom that comes when you no longer have to fear that everything will fall apart. But it's worth asking yourself, do your rules serve you or imprison you? Does the structure you create around yourself allow you to breathe, or does it tighten like armor? This chair says, I need meaning.
But sometimes, meaning doesn't come from order. Sometimes it comes from the chaos we allow ourselves to feel. You don't have to give up your rules to discover depth. You don't have to tear everything down to feel. But maybe it's worth asking yourself from time to time, is what I'm holding on to still guiding me, or is it just holding me back?
This is not just a chair. It is an armchair, inviting, cozy, classy. Its appearance exudes prestige and comfort. It's a piece of furniture that not only wants you to sit down, it wants you to relax. Make yourself at home, put down roots, stop rushing, and allow yourself the luxury of being important. If you have chosen this armchair, perhaps deep down you have a desire for recognition. Maybe your soul is whispering that you deserve more, for attention, for a place, for a space where you can be yourself without fear of being overlooked, unnoticed, unheard. It is the choice of a person who, perhaps consciously, perhaps not, wants to finally rest in their existence. According to Carl Jung's depth psychology, this chair resonates with the archetype of the king or patriarch. The king is not only a ruler, he is a symbol of dignity, the center, authority. He is the one who does not have to prove his worth, because he is worth it. But the path to such an inner king often leads through a wound of rejection, of not being seen, of a lack of unconditional love. Choosing this chair may suggest that you have a need for control, not because you are despotic, but because in the past you may have felt too many times that you are losing ground. In childhood, you may have experienced situations where your emotions were not noticed, your needs were ignored, and your presence was conditional. So you developed a strategy. If I am important, if I am needed, if I am strong, then they will see me. Such an armchair can also symbolize the archetype of the inner father, the one who may have been physically or emotionally absent. And now, through this choice, you are subconsciously trying to build within yourself what was once missing, a safe, strong, caring place within yourself. It is a space where you can finally rest. But it's also a trap, because sometimes, instead of a place to rest, the chair becomes a throne where you sit alone, separated from emotional intimacy. The softness of this piece of furniture says, I want comfort. But comfort does not always mean laziness. It is often compensation for a long period of tension. People who choose such symbols of comfort often carry within themselves mental, emotional, and existential exhaustion. They long for a space where they do not have to pretend, where everything has its place, where they can finally breathe. But an armchair that looks like an oasis of comfort from the outside can also be a place of hiding. It can be a bastion built by the ego that protects you from confronting your own sensitivity. Because if you always have to be strong, important, independent, when and where do you allow yourself to be weak, to cry, to feel helpless? Carl Jung emphasized that our shadow often manifests itself in what we excessively affirm. So if you choose luxury and comfort as your natural environment, it is worth asking, what am I trying to compensate for? Does my desire for prestige stem from a deep-rooted feeling of inadequacy? Are my needs really being met, or am I just covering them up with a beautiful interior? This armchair can also symbolize the need for control over space, both physical and mental. It is a place that belongs to you, where you decide who sits next to you, where you decide when and how you share yourself. And while this can give you a sense of power, over time, it can also isolate you. Are you afraid to give up control? Can you resist always sitting on the throne? Can you be important without being the center of attention? Jung said that the true self is revealed not when we are in control, but when we can consciously let go of it. If this chair speaks to you, it may be a sign that your soul craves not only comfort, but also acceptance. Not only power, but to be seen fully, with all your fragility, imperfection, and humanity. This chair says, I want a place of my own. But sometimes that place isn't external. Sometimes your place is where someone truly sees you, even if you're not sitting on anything comfortable. This chair does not stand quietly in the corner. It speaks with its color, texture, and pattern. It immediately catches the eye, as if saying, look at me, I am different, I am alive. It does not try to fit in. It does not want to be background. It is an expression, perhaps even a cry of individuality. If this chair caught your attention, you are probably someone who does not accept the grayness of life. You have an inner child, curious, spontaneous, rebellious against rules and rigid forms. Or maybe it's not just a child, but something more, an artist who wants to see the world differently, deeper, more colorful, with soul. Carl Jung called this psychological type the archetype of the divine child, primal, innocent, but also full of creative power. It is the part of you that believes that life is more than just a duty, that there is something beyond the mechanics of everyday life, that every human being carries a light within them that does not need to be suppressed. It is a living, pulsating, creative energy, and that is why it is often rejected by a society that fears everything that cannot be defined. By choosing this chair, you may consciously or unconsciously express a need for emotional freedom. You want to speak your mind, think for yourself, love on your own terms. You don't like masks. Pretending annoys you. Maybe in the past, you were the person who heard that you were too out there, too sensitive, or too emotional. Maybe you were taught to be polite, quiet, obedient, and now your soul is demanding space to finally dance in its own colors. But as Jung reminds us, even colors can be a mask. Sometimes what is most vivid on the outside hides pain on the inside. Maybe your creativity is not only joy, but also a shield. Maybe expression is a way to survive. Maybe you laugh the loudest because you're afraid that if you fall silent, someone will see your tears. This chair may be a symbol of a soul that was once heard precisely for being itself. A soul that was told it didn't fit in, that it was in the way, that it felt too much, said too much, trusted too much. And that is why today, this soul is doing everything it can to create its own world, a world that is more beautiful, more authentic, more its own. This choice may also indicate a strong need for authenticity, even if it comes at the cost of loneliness. Because not everyone understands those who go against the grain. Not everyone wants to listen to those who don't speak in cliches. But you know that a soul that remains silent for too long begins to suffer. And creativity is your medicine, your prayer, your way of being in a world that often tries to make us copies of ourselves. Jung wrote that contact with the archetype of the divine child is one of the most important experiences in the process of individuation, because it reminds us of who we were before we began to conform, before we learned to hide, before the world told us who we were supposed to be. By choosing a colorful, artistic form, you can not only long for your true self, but also boldly return to that truth. But the question is your freedom complete? Are you still afraid that someone will take it away from you? Does your expression come from a place of self-love or from a need to be noticed? This chair says, I want to be myself. But can you be yourself in silence, in sadness, in doubt? Are you ready to discover not only the colors, but also the shadows of your soul? Perhaps you are a soul that needs space not only to create, but also to be accepted, just as you are. Not always colorful, sometimes lost, sometimes quiet, but real. This chair does not beg for attention. It does not shine with colors or softness. Its austerity speaks clearly. I am tough, unbreakable. Metal and wood in a raw, minimalist form create an impression of solidity, inaccessibility, protection. This is no place for the sensitive. It is a fortress, a wall separating the world from your deepest self. If you chose this chair, perhaps your psyche expresses a need for resilience. You are a person who has learned to set boundaries, not only with others, but above all with yourself. Your emotional world is not a battlefield, but a fortress that cannot be easily conquered. It is a survival mechanism. Your life may have taught you that the world is full of dangers and that trust is a luxury you cannot afford. In Jungian psychology, this choice resonates with the archetype of the warrior or the loner. The warrior is a figure who fights, not for glory, but for survival, to protect what is precious. He is the one who is not afraid of pain, but often carries it alone, in silence. It is strength, but also a burden. The loner, on the other hand, is someone who, by choice or necessity, withdraws from the crowd, seeking solitude as a space for regeneration and reflection. It is the archetype of the inner seeker who does not trust easily, because life has taught them that openness can be synonymous with hurt. The choice of a raw chair may indicate a person who has experienced too much in life to trust without limits. Your skin is thick, but underneath it may lie a wound, invisible but deep. Perhaps you have learned to isolate your emotions and close your heart in order to survive difficult times. Perhaps there is a void in your history that is never completely healed. But this harshness is also a symbol of minimalism, of reducing things to what is essential. Perhaps you are someone who rejects unnecessary masks, unnecessary words, unnecessary relationships. You value simplicity and authenticity. You don't need the riches of the world to feel like yourself. You need truth and security. Jung noted that the warrior archetype is often associated with a defense mechanism that can lead to isolation. You protect yourself from being hurt, but this protection sometimes becomes a prison. You may avoid intimacy because you are afraid of losing control. You may push away those who want to get close to you, even if deep down you long for their presence. Can you open the doors of your fortress? Are you ready to take off your armor, even for a moment? Will you allow yourself to be soft, even if it means risking getting hurt? This chair says, I am ready to fight. But do you remember that sometimes the greatest courage is to allow yourself to be weak? Your choice reveals a part of you that does not want to be easily broken, that trusts only itself. But at the same time, it cries out for understanding, which can only come when you dare to take off your mask. Carl Jung wrote that true strength does not lie in hardness, but in the ability to transform, to accept all of your human complexity, shadow and light, power and weakness, loneliness and community. This chair is a manifesto of survival, but it is also an invitation to a new path, a path where hardness meets softness, a path where you can be a warrior and a beloved loner, a path where armor becomes just armor, not a cage. Choosing one of these chairs is not a simple decision. It is the voice of your subconscious trying to speak to your conscious mind through symbols. Even the simplest shapes, colors, and textures hide stories about your desires, fears, needs, and wounds. What you choose reveals a fragment of your soul, often hidden, unconscious, but no less real. No path is better or worse. Each is part of your unique journey toward wholeness. Looking through the eyes of the soul allows you to see that every symbol has the power to lead you to a deeper understanding of yourself and the world you carry within you.